Aaron Van Loo says, do you think Mike's been very vanilla on both sides of the ball since LSU?
Well, I don't think he really dictates much on defense. So on offense, I mean, I don't know, man. Against Southern Miss, they didn't do a lot of screen game. Jaheim had one pass thrown to him and dropped it on the first play of the game. They did a lot of kind of just throw it up deep and hope. I thought Boston College, they looked like a normal Florida State offense. I mean, the last 4 drives were gross, but they hit Jaheim a couple of times. They had Johnny running free in the middle of the field. It looked to me like it was the normal kind of Florida State offense. I just think things have a way of looking vanilla when you get stopped on 4 straight drives to end the game, and also when you can't get the running game going. And they just didn't get the running game going in that game to any real degree. And so that can make everything look vanilla. And we talked about it, Aslan, on the Warchant report. That's not out yet, right? If people are
It
watching this
is.
live.
Yeah, we just
Oh,
dropped it like 20
okay.
minutes ago.
Jeff and I talked about if they try to run early against Clemson and can't, the beauty of this team and the beauty of this roster and this offense is you could just decide to say, you know what we're going to do? We're going to throw it 75% of the time. That's not what Mike Norvell ever wants to do. That's not what his bread and butter has been. That's not kind of what his DNA is. But you know what? Mike Norvell's also never had a receiving core like this and a quarterback like this. And I feel like you don't just bang your head into a wall, because when they throw the ball, they move the ball well. And when they've run the ball, they didn't run the ball well against LSU, in my opinion, not to their standard, and they didn't run the ball against Boston College. Well, if you go out and Clemson again, and every time you try to run the ball, it's 2nd and 8, maybe just go a little hurry up, use that quarterback, use those wide receivers, and go move down the field that way. Get a little run and shooty. I think maybe that's not probably something you game plan for, like in the middle of the second quarter. You're like, we're switching everything. We're switching our whole identity. But maybe in the bye week, you go to that a little bit. But then I say that it ain't like the offense has struggled. They're averaging 48 points a game or whatever it is. And before that 4 possession slump, they had scored on 17 to 20 possessions. So what they're doing works. I don't. That's not what you asked, Aaron. I apologize. That was a long, meandering answer. I don't think he's been very vanilla. I'm sure he'll have some special stuff for Clemson, because he always does. He always will. But I don't know that he's like held everything back to just unleash something this week.
I think he has been a little guarded. I don't think you had to go full deployment against Southern Miss, and I don't really know if they thought they had you against Boston College. Just in terms of like the multiplicity of formations they run, the amount of like pre-snap movement they'll do, guys in motion. I don't think they've done nearly as much of it as we'd seen in the preseason and some of the sampling that we saw against LSU. Now, I don't know if that was by design or if they're trying to hold things back. I certainly, and you can agree with this, I would think, Corey, like we've seen how multiple they are in terms of
Yeah.
formations and, movements, pre-snap movements, putting guys in motion, things of that nature. And if they were to do a lot of that, let's say against Clemson, it wouldn't be foreign to them because they've practiced the heck out of it.
Yeah.
I just don't think we've seen a lot out of it the last 2 weeks. So it is something to keep an eye on. Chris Sanders, how does Florida State's defense hold up in a shootout? Do they create the stops needed?
They usually do. They got a stop. I know we all hated the Florida game, but they got a stop at the end, even with the crazy PI that McClellan had. They got that stop when it mattered. Oklahoma, Fitzgerald didn't kick that field goal with 2 seconds left. Like Oklahoma had a chance to go back down the field. They got the stop there, and they got the stop against Boston College. If you want to call a 31-29 game a shootout, they got the stop there. They usually do. So I'm going to go ahead and say sure.
Don't think it's going to be a shootout, though, right?
I don't know. I think because I think the game will be somewhere like low 30s to mid 20s, whoever wins. I wouldn't call that a shootout. I would be surprised if it's 45-42, because I don't think Clemson's offense is that good. And I think Clemson's defense is too good to just go in there and score 45 points. So I look for like a 31-24 game. But I do think, man, I think Florida State's defense can hold up. The one thing I worry about It's not so much even Shipley. He's going to get his yards because he's good, and they're going to make some plays because it's Clemson. But is that kid going to run a lot? Because he can run. And hey, it's 2023, man. Every college team has a quarterback apparently that can run, except Pitt. But they got. Can he? Is he going to take off and run for like first down, like 6 first downs? Because if you can keep him in the pocket and not making plays with his legs and having to try to win the game with his arm, I really like your chances. What are we looking at here, Aslan?
That's the list of the Florida State Clemson games since 2010. You can barely get 2010 probably on your screen there, but just kind of want to see how these games have worked out here in recent memory, at least when they've been competitive. Obviously, the Willie years were not competitive, but
that's really the only time, right? Like when you look at those scores and you think about the 21 game, especially, like I guess it ended up being a 9-10 point game, but it was, that was a 3-point game with a minute to go, or on the last play. Yeah. They even like the 17 game, the score ended up being lopsided, but that Florida State was down by 3 and had the ball at the Clemson like 40 after a turnover with 10 minutes to go in the game. Like they've always found a way kind of to make them competitive.
If it doesn't happen that way, Tim is asking the pessimistic side of the question, perhaps realistic. We'll see what happens on Saturday. If we end up looking like last week, what can or will be done at that point?
Well, the good news is there aren't a lot of teams that can do anything about it. Like, you're going to win a lot of these games regardless. There are 2 ways to view the question of the way we looked last week and some of the inconsistencies in the first 3 games that we've witnessed. One of the ways to look at that is that every game is unto itself. And so you cannot say that some of the problems you saw in week 1 against LSU are also problems born for the same reason in week 3. I don't think so. I think every game has been different. But we don't know, Tom, and this is what's interesting. This is why I said at the beginning of the week, this is a week where a lot of questions are going to get answered, good and bad. Let's hope they're good. What happens to, no matter how well they get along, I think it is fair to categorize them as this. What happens to a group of mercenaries, of guys who left where they were to come to a better, brighter place, who bought in and said and did all the right things upon arriving here, but no doubt have real NFL aspirations? They want the ball. They want to have an opportunity to showcase. What happens if things go south and you don't play as well as you thought you would, and you lose a football game on the heels of playing poorly against BC? Does it come off the tracks?
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that. And I don't know that anybody really does. You'd like to believe the answer is a resounding no. But there are real benefits to building your team through the high school recruiting avenue, as opposed to plucking talent. And again, I have reiterated this time and again, Tom, they've done a very good job of not just finding guys that could play, but guys that wanted to play here and abide by the rules of coming to play here.
Yeah.
But again, all that's really happened is that it's been kumbaya. They've won games. They've looked good. They've had their praises sung. They're ranked in the top 4. What happens if they face adversity? They finally did last week. Let's see how they respond.
Yeah, I think for 2 reasons, nothing will come from it in that sense. Number one, nothing is lost in terms of your ultimate goals, even if you lose this weekend. Now you got to play perfect from there on out, so the interest is held. Number 2, if I just go one by one on the players that have been brought in this year, not multi-year transfers, I'm going to assume that a multi-year transfer is bought into Mike Norvell. And a lot of these guys returned, not just because maybe the logo at the bottom of the screen right there had a hand in it, or but also because they believe in Mike. If they didn't, you go get more money in the professional ranks. But year 1 guys, or mercenaries, true mercenaries, are Keon Coleman, Braden Fisk, Fentrell Cypress, Keandre Jones, Jeremiah Byers, Casey Roddick. I mean, are any of those guys going to be a problem? I don't foresee that. They've never shown indications that they would be a malcontent. And I think, to your point earlier, they do a very good job of screening on the way in to make sure that, guys will fit neatly into this situation. There's nothing, Tim, to answer Tim's question, there's nothing that can be done in terms of, like, people say, well, when will coaches be held accountable? That, to me, is code for fired. Nothing's going to happen coming out of the Clemson game where somebody's reassigned or fired, even if it's a disaster. I don't think that's realistic.
Any chance, this seems to be a common theme, again, for everybody, of noting any chance the lackluster games from Jordan is him having too much faith in receivers?
What's
lackluster.
going on? What's going on, gang?
adjectives that people
What are y'all watching? I literally don't understand it. Like, I know he hasn't looked like he did in the second half against Oklahoma necessarily.
Second half against LSU.
Or make it, but they scored on 17 of 20 drives.
Yeah. I think it's fair to say this. I think it's fair to say this. He was okay on Saturday. He wasn't great.
No, correct. But he was okay for him.
But my point is he's a Heisman candidate, and he hasn't looked like a Heisman candidate. So I think I'm answering your question about them.
I mean, looked like it in the biggest game of the year.
We all went into the season with these over-the-top expectations for Jordan because he's great.
What
But
things he did. Well, but the thing is, the things he does that he does at a very high level that 95% of the college football programs would want their quarterback to do now have become expected.
Yeah, so you're grading on a bizarre curve. Not a bizarre curve, but a raised curve.
Right.
Well, I also think, for example, so Caleb Williams won the Heisman a year ago, and he's been lights out in that offense this year.
Caleb
Williams in that offense.
But also, he's awesome.
He is awesome.
He's great.
He can be first or second pick in the draft, right? So I think if you're categorized as a Heisman candidate alongside that, people say, well,
then you see the kid at Washington throwing for 480
Penix goes
yards.
nuts every week.
But
I'm answering your question.
No, I got you. But I think if you ran an offense with Jordan where he was 4 wide, run and shoot, snap it every 11 seconds like Shedeur Sanders, he would be putting up huge numbers too.
I don't disagree.
I don't think he's playing poorly or even average. I think he's playing
at a high level. What is fair though is in some of these drives, and you're right to bring up those stats that they've scored in a ton of drives.
Not a great on third down though.
But
they have to do it fourth down.
And that's the feeling is that it feels like if you're passing up the sure thing and taking shots and things like that, that when you play a better team, it's going to backfire against you, and you're not going to be able to bail yourself out on fourth.
Maybe, maybe. Yeah, I get it. Yeah. I think he's been good.
He can be a lot better. So both those things, right?
Yeah, they could have scored on 20 of 20.
No, but come on, Corey, you know better than that.
Yeah, he is.
Let's not act like
but he's not Caleb Williams, but he's still an exceptional college football player.
But I don't think they're saying he's not. I think their expectation is that he is.
Well, but how was it phrased? That's what I took issue with. Whatever.
Lackluster.
I wouldn't call it lackluster. He's been good.
Lackluster seems a little harsh.
Yeah, lackluster is what I mean. Then what was I don't know, EJ in 2012, or Ponder in 2010, or Drew Weatherford.
Whoa.
Hornswoggle.
Hornswoggle was lackluster.
Jordan Travis to some of the average-ass quarterbacks we've had?
Those were first-round picks.
If he's
Hornswoggle wasn't. I'm talking about
if he's lackluster, then what were they?
Yeah, I mean, lackluster, I just took issue with that.
All right.
That's all. And I love whoever that questioner was, I love you. You're the best.
I just think you're getting a little touchy-feely here. He can play better. It's all right. He can play a lot better. I don't think he will.
Lackluster.
Like, better not be lackluster this Saturday.
You're a little lackluster yourself.
I'm gonna bring up the lackluster play if he's bad.
Hey, I'll admit if he's lackluster.